The celestial mandala of service accompanies you to discover the 10th constellation of the Wheel of the Zodiac that we call Capricorn, associated with the field of service, new economy. Welcome to this 10th episode of this cycle of podcasts dedicated to human service fields. And this month, in the sign of Capricorn, we will be focusing on the field of new economy and how we might imagine a healthy and sustainable economy in the new era of human life. My name is Lorraine Flower, and I'm a member of the Community of Living Ethics and your host for this podcast today. Capricorn invites us to learn to use our resources in the physical world wisely. It is believed to rule banking, politics, and governments, which are all areas of human life that are struggling today as a result of greed, inequality, and selfishness. In Capricorn, our goal is to transcend these negative qualities into positive ones, so that the use of these physical resources is based on compassion, love, and empathy. We are asked to transcend this energy from its lower state into its higher, and in this way, money can be seen as a tool used for the higher good. In Capricorn, we're invited to climb the mountain of soul growth and eliminate the need for suffering. We're invited to express unselfish love and live the truth of our soul light. To help us reflect on this vital subject of a new economy for humanity, I'd like to welcome our guest, Marcello Spinello. Marcello is an entrepreneur and researcher in the field of new models of ethical economy. Welcome, Marcello.
Hello, everybody. Hello, Lorraine.
Hi, Marcello. It's lovely to have you with us today. As I said, today we'll look at economy and, of course, within that, finance, which today we'd like to consider from the point of view of the ethics of the greatest good for the greatest number of people, in order to try to build a fairer world and honor the evolution of our own soul and the soul of this planet. So, Marcello, could we begin by maybe asking you to make a distinction between economics and finance? Because my sense is there's still a lot of confusion about these.
Thank you, Lorraine. It's always a great pleasure to speak with you and to reflect. You asked me to make the distinction between economics and finance. I like to use the etymology of the words to understand more deeply. Economy derives from the Greek and it's made up of two words, oikos and nomos. Oikos, the house, nomos, the laws by which economy invites us to the wise administration of our home, which is our home as an individual and our home as a family group, and our home, our nation, our planet, our solar system, our galaxy. And the question we have to ask ourselves is, are we taking care of all these areas? Are we aware that every economic action we take, even the simplest, has a scalar impact from the individual to the galaxy? In fact, we are not aware of this, and the theme of caring is one that we need to explore precisely by using the energy that the sign of Capricorn makes available to us, the conquest of the summit of understanding and the summit of light. Then we have finance, because we all talk about economy on a daily basis. Thinking we are talking about economics and operating in an economic sphere. Instead, we often and really only thinking about finance, and this is the finance that dominate our lives, that heavily condition our lives as an individual, but also the lives of state and nation. The etymology of the word finance derives from the Latin finis, and that is what is the conclusion of where I am heading, where I set my finish point, my objective. Finance is the complex series of action by which an economic entity procures the means for the realization of its ends. Both economics and finance can be considered in purely material terms or in ethical terms. What is the discriminating factor? The discriminating factor is the understanding of another term, private property. Unfortunately, we are dominated by a great fear, which is an ancestral fear that is linked to the original fear of famine. And this leads us to have a great greed, to accumulate and to defend private property strongly. Once again, what does etymology tell us? That private comes from the Latin privare, that is, to take away from the availability of other and appropriate it. What does this tell us? That our planet, our solar system, is rich in resources, and scarcity is a great illusion. It is a great cage into which we have all fallen. The problem is that these resources are hoarded by a very few people, and this generates scarcity for others.
Thank you for this clarification, Marcello, and it seems to me very important for us to really reflect on the principle of private property and shared resources. In some of the ancient wisdoms, we are told that in this new age, in this coming time, the new financial players and the new economists will also work with the energies and the forces that are expressed in how they trade and how they share values, that they will be having to deal with the law of supply and demand and the great principle of sharing, going beyond that sense of private and ownership. And that principle of sharing governs divine purpose. And we often hear the phrase that money is energy, but that energy must flow so as not to create distortions. And so it's the circulation of that energy that has to first be ensured. I've obviously put a few things there. I wonder if you could speak a little bit more about some of those, Marcello.
Lorraine, you have touched on so many topics. I want to start with the supply and demand one, and then finish with this last question you asked me. Because we all think we know the law of supply and demand, which we simplify a lot by saying that if demand increases, price increases. If supply increases, price decreases. The question reveals so much more when articulated from a higher wisdom point of view, because it is exactly the opposite of how we generally think. We think that within us, or in an entity, a demand arises and this demand generates supply, because in the market it often happens like that. In reality, it is the other way around. When a demand arises, there is a powerful supply that wants to precipitate, that generates the demand. We need to better understand the gospel saying, ask and it will be given to you, because it's very true that when we invoke, we precipitate an evocation, but we invoke because an offer is ready for us. And this can help us discover an area of trust that we have unfortunately lost. We have separated ourselves from this one living organism, the planet and beyond. We live in this individual prison that deprives us of the connection to the abundant energy that is available on the planet. Let me give an example about supply and demand that just occurred to me a few minutes ago. That is quite obvious we live with every day. We have an innate demand for light, an innate demand for warmth, which then also manifests itself in the search for love. But where does this come from? It stems from the fact that our planet is bathed 24 hours a day by the sun's ray that loves the planet deeply, and this gives rise in us to a great demand for love that we experience as a deficiency, but only because we are not connected to the primary source that provides us with energy in this solar system. Here, our challenge is precisely to reconnect with our origins that go beyond our individual and perceive ourselves as one, as part of a planet that in turn is part of a solar system where scarcity does not exist. We have created scarcity. It's about trust and openness. They counteract the fear that generates scarcity. And why connect? Because we accumulate out of the distrust of life, out of distrust of each other. But if we are connected to the only living organism, we will never lack anything. And at that point, there is no need to become greedy. And at that point, there is a fair distribution of resources for everybody. So, what is the circulation of people, energy, and money? It is a powerful symbol of a solar energy that we can exchange with each other, creating golden threads that unite us. Actually, money was born to help us to love each other and to foster relational exchange.
Marcello, thank you. You speak very wisely about some very core principles, and yet somehow it still seems some way from where we are today. We know that energetically a lot is happening on the planet today, and that there are some small realities that hopefully are slowly making it more possible. We also know that some people are spreading these new economic models, and maybe we can hope that in the centuries to come, we'll see this on a larger scale. We hope that on a planetary level, we will start to see more visibly those things that are moving towards true exchange, true redistribution, a true sense of those talents and the qualities of the soul actually being present in the ecstasy of everyday living. But at this point, we could say perhaps we're truly preparing for a great celebration, a great feast, and that if we can acquire some of that trust you spoke with, we could start to collaborate more fully in our daily lives and to manifest this new economy in a new way. And remember that it is a field of service. But is there more we need to be doing, Marcello?
Lorraine, the first thing we have to do is to decide to conquer the summit that Capricorn introduced us to, which is the summit of the awakening of consciousness. That is only if we commit ourselves to connect with ourselves, to establish an inner government and try to really understand who we are, a soul that is having an experience. Teilhard de Chardin said, "We are not human beings having a spiritual experience. We are spiritual beings having a human experience." Here, starting from this assumption, life turns upside down, the hourglass turns over, because everything that is separateness and fear and distrust becomes connection, union, trust in life. In simple terms, wealth. Let's ask this term. True wealth, which is prosperity that is the best first of all, and integrity that is on living a life guided by higher principles and values.
I really love that definition for wealth, because it gets used so much in our world today and feels like a sense of separation again, and yet it is a fundamental birthright and that we all have access to it, as you say. Marcello, I feel there's so much more we could be saying, but at this point, as we come to a close in our podcast, we ask every guest to give us maybe one sentence, one thought that each of our listeners can take away and use in their everyday lives. And I wonder if there's something that you can share with us that will help us to stay connected with this field of service of new economy and new finance.
Lorraine, I have a quote from Gandhi that is very close to my heart, which says, "The earth has enough resources to satisfy everyone's needs, but not to satisfy everyone's greed." Here, this, in my opinion, is a synthesis that should lead us in our daily lives to become conscious producers of an economy that manifests beauty in every sphere. So, when I go to satisfy a need, I should really understand if it's an inner need, if it's a need of my soul that manifests itself in the sphere of personality. And at that point, by going to satisfy that need, I should generate beauty, and I should generate beauty for the whole system to which I belong. It's different when we go to satisfy an induced need that often generates disharmony and lack of beauty. It becomes the litmus test of our ethical choices in the field of economy. If we produce beauty, it means that we are truly working to conquer this peak of awareness that must see us no longer private owners of something, but wise administrator who lives what they administrated more beautiful than before.
Again, the introduction of the principle of beauty is very uplifting, and I really hope this is a task that we will have the strength and the courage and the confidence to embrace and to bring that beauty into our lives, and to see that exercise that you've given us, that simple question that you've invited us to consider in all our choices as we utilize our economy and our wealth. Thank you so much, Marcello, for giving us this reflection. And thank you again for being part of our podcast. We really appreciate your time and your thoughts. Thank you to all our listeners for being part of the podcast too. And we look forward to sharing more thoughts with you on the next cycle next month. But for now, thank you, Marcello. And we hope to see you again soon in this podcast.
Thank you, Lorraine, for this occasion of beauty. See you soon. Thank you, you all.
This podcast was offered by the Community of Living Ethics, Umbria, Italy, and freely inspired by Aldebaran, the community's Astrosophy group, and by our research on service.